Agronomists is brought to you by The Wheat School, Profitable Practices, and FMC Pre-School. FMC Pre-School is a product-agnostic program designed to equip growers and agricultural professionals with the latest tools and insights for effective weed management. From herbicide science to resistance trends, we're here to help you grow smarter. Learn more at fmcpreschool.com. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Agronomists. I am your host, Lyndsey Smith. Thank you, everyone, for joining us so promptly as the show begins. I think I was on time. Some people might think otherwise. All right, we've got a great show lined up this evening. Glad to see so many people hopping on. Let us know where you're from, where you're watching from, and whether or not the warmer weather has hit you. I feel like the wind howled today here west of Ottawa. I don't want to call it the Ides of March yet, but I think they're on their way. So let us know. Okay, so a reminder, of course, if you collect those CEU credits, head on over to realagriculture.com/agronomist. Let us know you watch the show and make sure you get those credits lined up. Also, while you're there, sign up for the newsletter. For the email, it will remind you of upcoming topics and will remind you to get those CEU credits in. So make sure you sign up for that while you're there. So that's realagriculture.com/agronomists. All right, so we've got plenty of people joining us. We've got people from Alberta, we've got Saskatchewan, we've got some Ontario in there. Jim Hale says future Senator Smith. No, I was apparently you have to put your name in the hat to be picked as a senator. I'm just waiting for a random phone call. Anyway, I'm going to hold out for that. Okay, in the meantime, though, and we are up against the French language Liberal leadership debate tonight, so thank you all for choosing tonight's broadcast instead. We are going to talk about ultra early seeding. In a few different regions, with a few different crops. And to do that, joining me tonight are my guests, Dr. Brian Beres out of Lethbridge. Great hat, Brian. And Tyler McBlain as well. Tyler, you also have a nice hat, but Brian's is definitely, quite branded. How are you both?
I'm good.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Tyler, let's start with you. South of Hamilton in Ontario. Yep. Tell us about your farm.
We farm with my parents and my wife, sixth generation. We've got 3 children, so hopefully one of them makes 7th. Corn, soybeans, wheat would be our main crops, and then we dabble in oats, which I guess we're going to talk about tonight. We also have a small custom farming business and a small seed dealership as well.
Okay. And now I think we are similar in that we are the parts of Ontario that really didn't have a lot of snow until the last 2 weeks. But yours, I think, is disappearing faster than mine.
Yes. The kids are they're a little sad that the snowmobiles might be put away quicker than they thought.
Mm-hmm. And Jason Vogt says I forgot Manitoba. Jason, that's impossible. I can't ever forget Manitoba. I still have a Manitoba phone number, for crying in my soup. Okay, Brian joining us from Lethbridge, where, that's one of those places that if you had snow, it never sticks around long. But I'm looking at the calendar, Brian, and it's February 24th. That makes me think that you might have wheat in the ground, spring wheat in the ground already. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. So what is it looking like this year for your ultra early trials?
Well, the earliest we've gone, and again, it's by monitoring soil temperature. So as soon as we hit 0, we start with our experimental treatments. But 2 degrees in the top 2 inches is sort of the trigger, as we call it, to start seeding. And so it doesn't matter when it happens, you just plant. And so far, the earliest that's been, I think with the 0 treatment, it was February 9th. Now, we're not going to hit that this year, but things are changing fast here. So, it could be sooner than later.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So let's back up a step. Brian, we are going to dig into sort of what does it mean to be ultra early seeding? What are you using as a trigger? Tyler's going to cover sort of the Ontario example of what they're trying on their farm as well. But why are we even talking about this? What is it about going in ultra early that potentially offers the advantage from your perspective? And then, Tyler, I want to get yours as well.
I just think that, conditions on the prairies at least are changing. And we talk about this snow, for example. the duration, for example, that snow sticks around has dropped dramatically. 3 weeks more of frost free period. You know, growing degree day units are probably going up. Um, and if you can go, why don't you? And I think a lot of farmers obviously are astute and were thinking that, but then nobody else in the neighborhood or community was doing it, and there was this risk, right? If I go too soon and it snows, it's a goner, it's a train wreck. And so I guess our role was, at least for me, was, why can't we go and let's forget about calendar dates as cultural norms around planting, and do something a bit more prescriptive and see if it'll work. And now we've got probably 45 plus site years of data, and at the very least, we're protecting yield, and so that gives you a lot of benefits in terms of competitiveness, earliness around harvest, getting that critical growth period out of July and whatnot. But often you can also enhance your yield, and so there's tangible and intangible benefits that we've seen. So at least for wheat so far, it's been a big positive. And you're not going to plant every year at every field as soon as it hits 2 degrees, or even just over zero, but you can do it more often than you think. And the bad weather that comes after is inconsequential, we've learned.
Now, we are talking about cereals tonight, but I do want to mention that a wise farmer out of Manitoba once told me that some of their best canola yields was the canola that got snowed on. So I'm just saying, sometimes it works for that too, but we'll come back to that. Maybe Jason out of Manitoba's got some comments on that. But Tyler, set us up. What are you trying on your farm, and what has been the driver for seeing what you can do with oats?
So oats was I like challenges in my life, so we were far enough south that big oat yields are unheard of. So to beat the summer heat, when we started frosting oats, we started planting them. Well, not 10th of March to 17th of March, and was working out. Last year, the weather was set up right that we actually, a year ago tonight, we planted our oats, February 24th. The conditions were right. We are going out on the frost has to come out, and then we're just going back out on enough frost to carry the equipment. But we're trying to beat that summer heat, that for us, that end of June, early July heat, and get them flowering before that. So
now, and here's the difference, and Peter Johnson, some of you may know him. He's here too. He's in the comments. We're talking about two quite different, scenarios here. Because Brian, of course, you're in Lethbridge where it's very dry, and you're potentially trying to make use of some of that early moisture. Tyler, you're in Ontario where we don't usually suffer from moisture. Sometimes we suffer at certain times, but our concern is more whether that soil is fit. So Tyler, I'll start with you maybe on and I see some people are thinking about, was the ground even frozen before the snow went flying here in parts of Ontario? We don't know that it was. So you're obviously timing it so that the soil can carry the equipment.
yes.
So, a bit of frost. So what is your like deciding factor? Like, okay, now we'll go. Yes, it's early, but it's okay. What's that thought process?
As early as we can get the drill in the ground to depth. So for us, the frost has to come out. Like this year, we have only this. Today is the third day, I think, above zero for us since December, mid-December. No snow, but we have deep frost right now this year.
Yep.
But most years we don't get that kind of frost here. So it's as soon as I can get the drill to my seeding depth of, we're looking for 1.5 inches approximately, but it has to have probably an inch crust above that to carry the equipment as well. So the one thing that goes against everything I've ever learned, we're seeding into mud, actually.
Right. Okay. So, and Brian, I'll start with you on this one. So Peter is asking, what about seedling disease into cold, wet soil? Now, Brian, I'm going to assume that most of the time you're going into cold, dry soil. So how does the moisture situation impact, or what have you seen with the research on the moisture situation?
Well, I think what we're trying to do in essence here too is we're trying to create and set up the spring wheat for all the advantages that come with seeding winter wheat in the fall. And so, yeah, winter wheat coming through into the spring, because it's already in the ground and established, it can be prone to more abiotic stress, some seedling disease and whatnot. And same when we go ultra early, conditions are usually, you know, really good moisture wise. And so previous work that we've done on winter wheat, would suggest that a dual fungicide insecticide seed treatment would be a good insurance against that sort of risk, both abiotic stress wise and biotic stress wise. Um, but we just wrapped up a 5-year study only in Lethbridge, and we didn't see a difference with using them. And that's not a surprise in Lethbridge, but but again, it was spring wheat, so maybe there's more to winter wheat sitting out there longer and being exposed longer to abiotic stress that gave us those good results that we had when we did the winter wheat study. But to be fair, we never tested that spring wheat study outside of Lethbridge. So, to me, cost wise, everybody comes to your door and says, buy, this input for $10, $10. Before you know it, you're at $150. But things like a seed treatment, I think, particularly for me, the big selling feature for me is I don't think there's a whole lot of risk on the disease side, at least where we've studied. It's that abiotic stress and the fact that these dual fungicide insecticides give you that significantly better resistance when needed, right? And is it needed every year? No. But can we predict that? No. So how much is that worth to you as a grower in terms of all these inputs you're assessing, saying that, I'm going to cap off at $120 in terms of certain inputs per acre. So,
Mm-hmm. So now, Woody Van Arkel, who goes by Laurent apparently as well, is asking about insects as problems at cold temps. And I'm surprised you didn't ask about slugs. But Tyler, a bit of a different scenario that, your oats are going into, yes, early, but potentially wet conditions, different than Lethbridge. So what do you see as far as disease threats, or are you treating seed? How do you sort of handle how you set that crop up?
So we're planting certified seed, so it is treated with it's treated and it's certified. So just to help mitigate some of that risk. I'm no expert on oats. There are a few acres a year that I can't say if we're losing any bugs or not. I'm sorry.
I think you would probably know if it was very bad.
It's not bad. Definitely not. Yeah. No, it's not a bad thing.
Yeah. Okay. So, but it is treated, because that would, to me, is a significant difference. Jim Hale wants to know about wireworm. Brian, has that been an issue early on?
No, I mean, I don't think a whole lot changes early versus late in terms of some of the biotic factors that you might encounter around insects, and they're kind of like chasing a ghost. So it comes back to that, that whole issue is like, okay, as a seed treatment, either for the biotic side or the abiotic side, it's something I'm willing to invest in as an insurance policy, potentially against those factors. And growers will know if they have a history of it or not. And I don't think the the early versus late is going to make a big difference there. And then I see just a couple quick comments there. I see somebody asked about barley, and we've just started on that. So I don't have a whole lot of info on that, but Earl's asking about anything different in the way of equipment or whatnot, I think. And the nice part about this system is there's no changes needed on farm. Other than if you don't have some sort of soil temperature probe, you got to go get one of those. But conventional equipment, disc versus whole, all that kind of stuff is compatible. Same with the genetics. My PhD student back in the day, Dr. Graham Collier, who was with New Farm, we address that too. So the nice part about it is the genetics, equipment, all that, it's a seamless transition.
Mm-hmm. Tyler, does I mean, obviously this is different than, potentially putting in winter wheat in the fall, etc. But what does anything change for your setup going frost seeding oats?
Um, yes, you gotta have the heat on in the tractor. Don't want to get outside.
Yeah, yeah.
So the big thing, we make sure we have to crank down pressure to make sure we're getting in the ground. Setup's very similar for planting winter wheat. Basically, the drill's set up the same way, and just it's not much. Just maybe turn up the radio again because the drill does make some funny noises planting into frozen ground. So you don't want to take a new drill out there if you don't have to. And just
good call. Yeah.
And
all right.
So the only big difference probably from planting wheat is we plant our headlands first. Just from the turning on it, you're driving the frost deeper potentially. So we plant our headlands first.
Interesting. Okay. That's a good point. Okay, so fan on full blast, cover up sounds, also keep you warm. Good. Treated seed, good. What about seeding rate? How do you choose if you dial it up, down? What do you do with seeding rates?
So we still learning here. We started off, we're probably planting oats a little higher than the traditional grower. We started off in about 1.5 million. Last year, actually, we were variable rate seeding. The farm we planted in 24 was extremely heavy clay, which majority of our ground is, but it transitioned to a sandy loam river flats. So we backed off the population to about 1.2 on the lighter ground, and it changed back to about 1.5 on the heavier ground. Yeah. Right or wrong, still learning, but I guess I'm in the camp, planted a lot of wheat in my life. I like to make sure I have enough plants out there. With the heavy clay, we do deal with frost heaving too. So if we do get some frost, we're a little heavier on the population than some might be.
Mm-hmm. Now, and we're going to go to sort of some of maybe the pitfalls of going in too early, potentially with wheat or with other crops, and maybe some of the lessons learned. But I wanted to ask Tyler, obviously this is, going on early to avoid potentially that really hot weather during fill or flowering and then fill. What goes in after the oats?
Oats. No, cover crop. They come off too late to double crop into beans, so we'll plant another cover crop, usually using some oats, but buckwheat. I like I'm a big buckwheat fan, and usually it gives us why we grow some oats to get more cereals in a rotation and to give us a chance to work on the farm, whether it's addressing fertility or this year we tiled the farm, so there's some other things going on there as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I like it. That's pretty cool. And hey, we like oats on oats. That's fine.
I should add too, we have planted wheat after oats a few times when our soybeans were later. We do use the same farm to just get in some early wheat as well once in a while. But if we try to avoid it, but it allows us to get some early wheat in once in a while.
Okay, awesome. All right, Jason says, oofda, 1.5 for oats is heavy. But okay, Jason, you said this is frost seeding and this is on heavy clay. It's not necessarily... Yeah. Okay. So, producer Jay, if you would, let's go to because we've got a wheat school with Brunel Saber in out of Manitoba a couple of years ago. That there was an ultra early trial, sort of off the cuff, and there were some lessons learned in that year where perhaps the early stuff was at an disadvantage. It got cold again. All those sorts of fun things. So we'll take a look at that clip, producer Jay, if you would, and come back to our conversation.
Early seeded fields like this one, did they get off to a better start because they were able to take advantage of that snowfall in the middle of April there?
Yeah, I think they did. The emergence was more even, but so, at the end of the day, I think that the earlier seeded stuff has a better chance this year because of the heat, but time will tell once the heads start emerging and we can have a better idea of what our yield potential is going to be.
Yeah, because we did have some of that heat early on too early for the wheat. Like you said, it has kind of locked in that smaller head size already.
Yeah, exactly. So our maximum yield potential is set. It's what can we realize? We can still get some more favorable weather, as the wheat is flowering to help with grain fill, to the number of kernels and making sure that we have nice big plump kernels, but cross that bridge when we get there.
Yeah. Every year, of course, Brunel is different and we face different weather challenges. But in general, do you see the shift towards early seeding wheat happening in this part of the world like we have in Ontario and even in parts of southern Alberta? More producers have tried it. Do you see that happening here? Or do you see that being a way for growers to reduce their risk and improve their prospects with their wheat crop here in Manitoba?
I firmly believe so, yeah, for sure. Because we know we tend to get a lot of moisture early on in the season, but then turn dry later on. And then just the heat that we have and the winds can really take its toll on a crop. So the earlier we can seed it, the more we're into that window of cooler weather, not only when it's in that 3 to 5, 6 leaf stage setting yields, but also later on when it's flowering and filling.
Okay, so it's still the idea, even despite the challenges we've seen with both the early and late normal seeded wheat this year, the idea or the theory still stands when it comes to the advantage of early seeding wheat.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
I thought this would be a great year for us to test that theory. Being able, we could have been seeding late March if we wanted to, just because of the lack of snow. But the fact that we're so dry, there's a lot of what ifs.
Our sponsors tonight are Profitable Practices, FMC Pre-School, and the Wheat School. From varietal advancements, protein and yield management, precision farming, and on to marketing, Real Ag's Wheat School is a video series that tackles every facet of the wheat growing season in an engaging and informative format. The Wheat School is made possible through C&M Seeds and Bayer Crop Science. Learn more at wheatschool.com. Sorry, I dance sometimes during the breaks. Okay, so some good questions coming in, but also I sort of wish I had gone back to Brunel and asked how the yields sorted out. But one of the questions that does come up, and Jeanette's asked it as well, and Brian, I know that it doesn't necessarily snow a lot past March, but sometimes it snows in July in Calgary, so whatever. But what happens if you do get cold, wet weather in April? Has it ever turned into a bit of a disaster?
No.
Okay.
And the other, and and this is what we've learned, right? Like starting out, I had no idea what would happen, right? And early on, we had some early adopters get going gung ho. I remember Jay Schultz was one of them, and a couple others in Alberta, and that year we had this abnormality of frost events in May that were like going as cold as I believe in the range of -8 to -11. And all these guys were in early and this wheat's out and it's like, whatever stage. And I'm thinking I'm going to get lynched in the town square for this idea. And everybody came back and said, yeah, it burned the tips a little bit, but it's the best wheat I've ever had, basically. And everybody that's tried it, generally, when they've had those adverse conditions that follow, and there's pictures on Twitter that we've shown and whatnot, and I've got a slide here as well about, it's going to snow after, and that's not going to matter. I think the big thing, and to Peter's point, I think he was asking, does it ever not work? I think the only time it hasn't worked for us was at zero, when the soil was still pretty hard. And so we were using a knife opener and it brought up pretty big aggregates. And so obviously, the principle of good seed to soil contact, was problematic that 1 year. And I don't think we've had it since. So it can happen if you just got to make sure your soil conditions are allowing you to get on there. And I think that's, it's been a bit of an issue where they're a farmer knows he can go, but he's thinking about risk. Even in the video there, well, we could have gone in March. Well, I know there's an old book in Manitoba, but I think it's AJ King or somebody like that. I've got a slide of it anyway that Steve Shirtliff shared with me. But this is a farmer back in Letters from AJ King or something like that in the 1880s or something. He's planting his wheat that early because they didn't know. They didn't know when you should or shouldn't, right? And over time, it's kind of been ingrained to us that, at the coffee table, you can't go that early. Like, as long as you're in by the crop insurance deadline of here, May 10th, you're fine. And it's always been about that business or that norm, and it's never been really about the biology of when you can.
Mm-hmm. What slide was that, Brian? I wanted to show there's a couple, and then and
3.
Tyler's got some great ones. Slide 3, okay? We can go to that, but okay. So there you go. Oh my gosh,
Yeah,
that's
so that
yeah,
was when
that's
we
cool.
went real early, February 9th.
Yep.
And then here we have, as usual, a wicked snowstorm rolls through, and you've got these tender looking
Poor
seedlings
little.
poking out, and you think
Yeah.
that's a write-off, right? It's game
Yeah.
over. No, not. And
It
it
was
never
not.
is.
Yeah.
Because we
Now.
had good establishment, right? You asked earlier about a
Okay.
seeding rate. Well, we're
Yeah.
seeding. I've been an advocate of high seeding rates, and we're seeding, I think in these studies, about 40 seeds per square foot or 400 seeds per square meter.
Yep.
And, and I think in this study, and this was durum, and we've seen pretty good success with durum. Looks pretty much the same as our hexaploid wheats as well. So,
Okay.
yeah.
But you said barley is the one that you're just starting to do some of this work on, because there were some questions in the chat about malt barley, but that's
Yeah,
one we don't have answers for yet.
we just started. We're lucky to get funding from Sask Barley and Manitoba Crop Alliance.
Cool.
And then at some point, it might be worthwhile to go to that critical growth period slide if we have time, because I think that's
Sure.
kind of gets at the essence of why
Okay.
early is working.
Yep. Okay. Is that slide 2? So, because the question is, and Tyler, I want to go to you on this one as well, is that question of, it's so critical that these plants are not flowering during that extreme heat. And so going in early with oats can answer that. But same question to you. Has it ever gone so poorly it was just a complete write-off?
Yes, we learned the hard way.
Okay.
But in 2022, we seeded it would have been 13th of March, actually, and they started to germinate. But we had 2 weeks later, we had a cold spell come through of -12s,
Yeah.
and it fried the growing point, and nothing came up pretty well. The only wheat or oat, it came up is where I emptied my drill off and some corn stalks and then field over. They're the only ones that survived, but the soybean stuff we planted to, it fried it. So thank God for crop insurance. And then that field turned to soybeans pretty quick.
Right. So, I mean, and that is the option, though, is that you are going in so early that, if it's not going to make it, you still have a regular growing season to grow potentially another crop, right?
100%.
So, yeah. So, I mean, still a risk. I'm not saying it's not a risk, but you're not going to lose, as they say on those reality TV shows, you're not going to lose your whole season. So, yeah. Okay. All right. So, Brian, walk us through here in this, why it's so critical that we're trying to avoid these very hot days. And Jason did note that video I played was from 2021, where yes, it is possible there could have been wheat put in March. It didn't end up working out as great as we had hoped, because it got hit with heat. That was the key, was that it wasn't that the ultra early wheat didn't do well growing, it's that it actually ended up getting hit by really hot weather. So yes, so walk us through this.
Yeah, and I just add to that, I think you got to ask yourself, what am I farming for and planning for? Am I farming for the 1 out of 5, 2 out of 10 years, or the 4 out of 5, 8 out of 10 years? And I'll tell you, you can certainly experience something like that in 1 out of 5 years that it doesn't work well at all. But 4 out of 5, I'll take that any day of the week, and that's kind of what our experience has been. Now, specific to this, it's more complicated than it is. But the key here are the 2 red lines there. In the above part, you've got June and July in red with the blue bar there that we're calling conventional planting, and that happened at the end of April, let's say, hypothetically speaking. So that means the critical growth period of that wheat, which would start kind of at jointing and then just post flowering, half of that is typically in July. And we know, especially in southern Alberta, as soon as you get into July, you're getting into temperatures over 30 above, and you're getting into just about terminal drought issues as well. And those two are a potential train wreck. Anything over 30, and you now start having floret abortion, and so your seed number is going down. So it's impossible to achieve yield potential. And the thing about why, and this is something that came sort of after the fact as we learned, is that, why does it work? Well, it works. Ultra early planting works is because think of two things: that red critical growth period as a rubber band. Ideally, we would like to stretch it out as much as we can, because that's gonna lead to more heat units and absorption of radiation and whatnot, and greater yields. But more importantly, we've been able to shift that whole critical growth period out of July. And so unless it's a total drought train wreck, which is, I'm pretty sure, Manitoba in 21, all bets are off then, early, late, whatever.
Yeah.
If you get beat by late planting and a super low yield potential, what does it matter? But the beauty of this is you shifted it out, and that's why it works year in and year out. And does it always give you better yield? No, but it always protects yield, almost always.
Okay. Now, Tyler, Pete wants to know your years of failure out of how many attempts. So, you're still doing it, so it's clearly worth it. So, is it 1 in 10, 2 in
1 in
8?
8. 1 in 8.
1 in 8. Okay, so that's not bad. So I would take those odds too. Brian,
Yeah.
I would as well. Now, okay, Michael's got a good question here. And Tyler, I want to ask you, we'll actually just start with what you are doing. As far as fertility packages for your oats, how do you handle what goes on ahead, after with the seed? How are you handling fertility?
So we're putting a dry blend down in furrow, and it's, the actual is going down. It's a 14, 40, 34, and 10 sulfur is the blend we're putting down. And then the bulk of our nitrogen will stream on when we're streaming her in on our winter wheat. So last year in 24 with planted ultra early, we were shooting for 90 pounds of actual N. And then there was another 8 pounds of sulfur in that N, just because it was the same blend I had going down on my wheat. It's a dry blend going in furrow.
Okay. And someone asked about straw. What do you do with, how do you manage the straw with the oats?
So I hate to say it, I'm against selling straw when it comes to wheat, but we do sell our oat straw. We do have a premium market for it. Just there's a lot of hoity-toity horse people around here that will pay a premium for the oat straw. So we do sell that straw.
Mm-hmm. It's okay, Tyler. You can be forgiven. We all have bills to pay. Yeah. Horses, as they say, an excellent hedge against wealth. So that's right. You sell them that oat straw. But that is the difference from your wheat, as you're saying. Like your wheat, you keep your straw and mark it back in. But the oats that you're selling it. Okay.
So
cool.
I do see a comment there about too low of N on the oats. We also are planting our oats on soybean stubble, so there will be some residual N from those soybeans as well. How much, I'm not sure.
Yeah. Okay. But you are putting also, you said, a dry blend down at planting, and then you're coming in with N after, right?
Correct.
Yep. Okay. So Pete says 90 pounds of N is a lot for your area. Peter, it's his farm. He can do what he wants. Anyway, what about lodging in the ultra early frost seeded? Lodging is a good question, Tyler. And if you've got some good ground, powerful ground, that's a concern.
So on our heavy clay ground, we haven't dealt with it too much, but last year we had some oats on some good ground, so we put a growth regulator down to help keep them standing. Okay. And it worked. You could see exactly where I missed.
Okay. Those are excellent passes.
It was a unintentional trial.
But yeah, there you go. Lessons learned. What is it?
Yeah.
Test plots. There are no mistakes, only test plots. That's
Ken Nixon.
Ken Nixon. There you go. Okay, so Brian, but Michael's question then, when using seed placed ESN, will ultra early seeding affect nitrogen released from the pearl? Okay, so in general, there's fertility questions around this, but do we need to be rethinking or changing our thinking about what products we used if we're going in ultra early?
No, not with nitrogen. I think if you're seed placing it, it'd be no different than the way you would have done it with winter wheat. And so you're going to get the nice release. And the beauty of ESN is when you're single shooting, you can just about put all your nitrogen needs down with the seed, and you're good to go. And if you prefer, like, it just depends on how it's almost like, with all the nitrogen work we've done, it's almost like on farm preference. Like, do you prefer to band it all, because that is the safest way. If you go back to that critical growth period, if you're too late applying your split, if that's the major proportion of your N going down and you're too late, you screw up that sink source thing, and you're going to the plants are going to dig themselves in a hole and not have enough nitrogen. And so that's why, generally speaking, banding all at planting isn't a bad strategy if you're okay handling that bulk. If you really intensify things and it's justified with a high production scenario, high yield scenario, then yeah, the splits become compelling.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Reynold shares in 22 seeded wheat early and was covered with 6 inches of snow for a week. Not only beat the heat midsummer, but the cool soil under gave the seed a chance to tal. I don't know if that's grow, till. Anyway, let us know, Reynold. But definitely, I would say so. And I think, and this is where that thinking about canola that got snowed on is, if you're in a dry area, especially so canola being near the surface in a small seed, if it was dry, snow is just slow release moisture, right? So maybe it's not the worst. Now, that's different than freezing rain. It's different than potentially, like Tyler, like you said, having -12 on exposed soil, exposed seeds. That's a different story. Tyler, what are actually? Can we go to producer Jay? Let's go to some of Tyler's photos, because we've got some great pictures that we can go through, and sort of go through. If you can talk us through some of these on some of the lessons that you have learned with your experience so far.
So frost seeding, you always get to see the sunrise pretty well. Right. Very little. So that would have been about 2 a.m. We've done it both ways, as the frost is going in and as the frost is going out. Preferable in this case was in the middle of the night and the planting until the frost came out, finish the farm. But yeah, we're just trying to find just enough to carry that drill and tractor across the field. So next picture, so I think it's picture 2. Yeah, so that's what it looks like after we've gone through. The picture doesn't do it actually. Sorry?
I know we're not supposed to go by the calendar, Brian, but what time of year was this?
That was February 24th.
Wow. Last year.
So a year ago today. Yes.
Yeah. And this field right now is under at least a foot of snow. If it were mine, it's under 2 to 3 feet of snow.
Yeah.
But this
it was
is
under more
last year.
It was under more at noon today, but we've lost quite a bit today. So yes.
Okay. Yeah. Yeesh. Yeah. Okay. Carrying on. Okay. Yeah. That's unbelievable.
So that, I'm just picking my date. That would have been June 26th. Yeah. Just again, we're not an outgrowing area, so to me they looked tremendous.
Yeah. That's
the only problem is
the week, June 26th.
But the week before that, it was 30 degrees for a week straight.
Right.
So if you go look at we lost about 20% of our flowers that week. As Peter would say, that we blasted the flowers out of that road. So we had a bigger crop than at one point, but they still, again, our geographic where we live, we were very impressed with them.
Yeah, for sure. Now, what about rust? Because oats and rust are besties. So, yeah.
So that has 2 shots of fungicide on it, an early one and then a later bigger shot. And I could have sent a picture, but right the one corner where I missed, they were orange. Yeah. So, but with spraying, they're clean. They were clean as anything. Compared to the pressure that was there.
Yes. Yeah.
So yes, we do have to spray them, definitely.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. Okay. And which one's the next one?
So so we're backing up there. So that would have been April 26th. So that's what they look like, the 26th of April. So that's when we were doing our first shot of N on our winter wheat. So I think the same day we streamed the rest of the N on them as well. But not used to seeing oats that big. And then I think the
Yeah.
last picture was of harvest. And then just, harvest.
Okay. And when did you actually harvest them? It's a very
We
nice
harvested
header,
them yeah. We're working out some problems with the header.
Okay.
July they were harvested July 29th. We probably could have been in there a week sooner, but we were still dealing with our winter wheat crop, trying to finish that up. So they were more than ready when we took them off.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess that was, and that is actually one of my questions is, when do you typically hope to take them off, and does it overlap with winter wheat harvest? So it does then at times get in the way, or at the same time?
Yeah, it's the tail end. This was a little closer because they were seeded a little earlier. Usually we're in that first week of August taking them off. So we're close to that, but they were a week earlier coming off anyway than normal for us.
Okay. And Brian, for the trials that you've done with it's ultra early spring wheat, some durum, does it actually end up several days earlier? Or how does that work out? How does it shake out?
Can Jay go to slide 4?
I think he can. He's quite talented. There we go.
Now,
ta-da!
Full disclosure, this is a bit of a cherry pick, but I think but we've got a ton of data on the durum side, and it's kind of, this is reflecting that too. But let's see, I've been with Ag Canada for almost 34 years. This is a first. 2024 was a first for me in a few days, especially when in the context of going ultra early. So in this study, the guys and gals were planting at these 4 different temperatures. So they either went in as soon as it went over 0, basically in the top 2 inches. And this is CDC Defy I'm focusing on. So you can see your yield is kind of dropping as you wait. And 10 degrees is kind of when some retailers would tell you that's when you should go. Honestly, that's not a lie. But this middle picture here is what we seeded. I forget the day we seeded the 0 to 3 degrees, but we are harvesting this. And look at the sample. That's a pretty nice sample.
Yeah,
we harvested that
nice.
August 1st. August 1st. And you can see the yield here. That's 6 tons per hectare. So that's about 90 bushels on dry land. And that's the plot coming off. Steven's harvesting it there. That's like your best case scenario, right? And that's because of the year, because if you guys recall that are in our neighborhood, we could go in early with our 0, maybe the 5, I forget. But if you waited beyond that, we had a whole bunch of rain and snow come, and it kept people out of the field for quite a while. And so this is, if you went, you reaped the benefits, and if you didn't, you didn't reap them. And that was a total first for me. August 1st with durum is, unless it would look like rice normally, and a lot of it did in Saskatchewan. But that wasn't on account of going ultra early. That was just the year they had. But this blew my mind.
So sorry, Farmer Jim, because he's in Saskatchewan and grows some durum. Producer Jay also lives near Lethbridge and is commenting in the side chat, that is amazing for dryland. It is, though. Like, this isn't what you would necessarily ever count on, but it was.
And that won't be the average over all the years that we did it, over all the location. But 2024 was that year that ultra early you reaped the maximum benefit, because you could get in, but if you were gun shy and waited, you paid a price. And we've done the math on it. If you wait too long and then combine it with not seeding at a high enough rate, it's basically $200 a hectare you've left on the table, which, as a lowly government scientist, is a lot of money for me. I don't know about rich people like Lyndsey Smith and Haney and whatnot, but for me, it is.
Me and my 100 acres of pasture. Look out. Okay. So now, so someone asked, so there's Michael's got a good question. We're going to talk a bit of equipment in a moment, but I'm just going to, Producer Jay, if you would, we'll take a quick pause, do our last read of the night, and then we'll answer some of these great questions about equipment and variety selection. Our sponsors for the Agronomists are FMC Pre-School, the Wheat School, and Profitable Practices. Profitable Practices on Real Agriculture is a video series featuring Canadian producers who are adopting farm practices to have a positive impact on profit, people, and the planet. Profitable Practices is made possible by support from Farm Credit Canada and RBC Royal Bank. Find out more on our YouTube channel. All right, so a question. Oh, I want to just back up. I was right. Tal meaning tillers. So basically, that the spring wheat that got snowed on, also tillered, did really well. So that's awesome. We've got a question here, wondering if you'd see a benefit in using longer season varieties. So Brian, I'll go to you on this one as far as, because I think that's a spring wheat question. But you have looked at varietal differences between whether it's durum, spring wheat, etc. Do some varieties do better? And is that a function of them being longer season, or can we even say that?
I think they, generally, especially the spring wheat, like the hexaploids, it was all kind of the same, and maybe we didn't take a deep enough dive. I don't know. With the durums, you can see with that slide that I showed that it was kind of indicative of what we were seeing a little bit, where Defy and Stronghold were a little bit better than Transcend. So there could be some genetic differentials in like Defy, especially because we had also a dormant seeded component to it, which is we would wait in the fall until the soil's cooled to below 2 degrees and then we planted. Defy was okay with that. Stronghold and Transcend, not so much. So I think, what I would like to see once I'm pushing tulips is that somebody has come and taken this concept on the genetic side and come up with genetics that, call it a flex wheat, whatever, that allow us to plant dormant, allow us to go ultra early, and it's tailored just for that and around flowering duration or whatever is needed. But yeah, like I think I would experiment with super late maturing. I would, if I was like part of my logistics plan was to get it out early, I would try some early stuff, and that's kind of what we did in this study. Like we had a really early maturing durum, didn't yield as well, but maybe that's not the number one priority in that particular rotational phase either.
So in that, Tyler, it's a bit of a different question to you because you are going to put in a cover after it. Doing this ultra early oats are to get cereal in the rotation. So I want to explore that a bit with you. Is there an ideal window that you would like to have these oats harvested? Like, have you thought about trying to find an even shorter variety as opposed to longer?
If we could get them off sooner, the better, just because we do use the oats also as cover crop seed. So the later it takes for them to mature, the longer it takes, the more delayed we are planting our cover crops. So, but also for what we're doing, finding an oat for us, there isn't many varieties either. So we're trying to pick the best one out of very few.
Yeah.
So so our options are limited, I should say.
And here, Pete spent all this time researching wheat for his career, and he's left you with no oat varieties to speak of. Maybe Brian could send you some good ones. Okay. But it's an interesting. It's like two ends of the same question, right? Because even Brian, to your point, if you could go super short, does that open up other opportunities? And so Tyler, for you, I mean, you're putting it in there and then using that seed. The sooner you could have that, if you could have it out before your wheat, you could have it cleaned and turned around and ready to go once the wheat's out of the field, right? So it's kind of two ends of the same question. Now, Earl's got a great question, and thank you, Earl. I should send you a hat because Brian and I have had this conversation. And see, that's the hat you'll get. But we have had this conversation because now, Tyler, you said 1 in 8. You've been doing this a little while. You like to try new things. Brian, you said you've got 45 site years of doing this, and it seems to work quite well. So what about the rate of adoption? And Brian, I'll go to you first, and then Tyler, I want to ask you this question as well. So we have really good work, Brian, that you have done, and I like that you've also added a master's or a PhD project because that's a sign of a good agronomist. But do we see this? I know Jeanette asked earlier, like, is this a fit for Southern Manitoba? Like, can we see more of this? Are we seeing more of this?
I think so. I mean, it's not like I can budget for a survey to find out quantitatively, but I'll say this: like, if the interactions on social media are any indication, we have growers every year adopting it. Like, I just every year I'll get 1, 2, 3 that'll ask me, okay, it's good to go in my area according to what you're saying with this prescriptive soil temp trigger thing. Nobody's going. Should I go? And I go, yeah, go try it. And and they do. And most, like, I just got yesterday on Twitter direct messaging somebody who's like, thank God I went ultra early. That was like, it saved our yields. And so particularly Durham production region, but we've had this as far north as Dawson Creek. Not much in Manitoba, but it's not going to work in every location. You're not going to get in February 9th like we did in Lethbridge, but everybody could go earlier than they are because in their mind, they're for sure weighing what comes after, even though I can go, and also crop insurance, I think. But, if you think about the physiology and that thing by Gustavo Slafer around critical growth period, I think the risk of waiting for moisture, for example, till almost June to plant, like, you better hope like hell you never get in any temperatures over 25 and lots of rain, because that's what'll save that. Otherwise, I think it's going to be way too risky.
In fairness, in Southern Manitoba, first week of May, the Red River Valley could still be underwater. So I'm just putting it out there. It could still be. It has happened. Ask me how I know. Okay. Tyler, similar question to you, though, and I want to back up maybe a little bit more to explore a little bit more of your why in doing this. You said you like a challenge, which is great, but I am assuming that there are some valid reasons for doing this. So maybe you could highlight some of those, and then if you could share, the kind of conversations you have with your neighbors. Do they all think you're crazy?
Yes.
Okay.
No,
cool.
So, I guess we go back to the first year, would have been 2015. We took over a farm that was landlocked, and we didn't get it till the winter. And it was surrounded. We planted wheat around it, so we had to get a cereal in there just to try and get it into a rotation. So that was the original why. And then from there, it just kind of blossomed into liking a challenge to make this a profitable crop for us. Again, some of the guys that work for us aren't thrilled with me just for the few acres we have, we got to clean out a sprayer multiple times, different timing than everything else. Nothing's done at the same time, but we have a market, whatever. We don't use this for cover crop seed. We have a local feed mill that takes it for the feed for the horse market. Long as we can get heavy test weight oats. So traditionally we are 38 to 42 pounds out of the field oats. So that's not cleaned. So they are heavy oats. So yes, that's kind of the why. And I like challenges people said it couldn't be done around here. Uptake. I'm not going to say no one else is doing it in Ontario, but no one else that I know of for a long ways. The local coffee shop does think we're crazy. I've had a phone call in the middle of the night wondering why I'm planting soybeans in March.
And you should just tell them because I want to. Let them think it's soybean. Yeah.
Exactly. I had another neighbor, non-farming neighbor, that took a picture of me and put it on Twitter, just that McBlains are crazy, because again, we were out in the middle of the night, they just seen the headlights in their window. So so I'm not saying no one else is doing it, but I don't know of anyone else. I said it takes a little bit of extra management, and I think Peter mentioned in the chat too, we have to be ready to go in February to do this. So the equipment has to be ready to go now, not in April. So
that's right.
Things are, as you can see behind me, going through the shop already, ready to go for the next season.
Right. If you could look into your crystal ball and let me know when that will be, when will the snow be gone? Because I feel like it's going to be here forever, because that's just where I am today. I don't like February.
There's a good chance we might not be growing oats this year. Just
how
hard the ground's frozen. I have my cutoff date that after that, soybeans are going to be
Yeah.
planted. So unfortunately, this is the most snow we've had in a long time. And I say most snow, it's melted today,
Yeah.
and there's maybe a foot left.
Yeah. But after the
We're not in
last
the
two
big snow.
winters, after the last 2 winters of almost like last winter was almost
Correct.
none. And the winter
Yep.
before was pretty mild. So it does feel
Good.
like a lot this year. Jeanette
Yep.
is nosy. And Jeanette, thank you for saying that you're nosy, but she wants to know how they yield those oats. How do you do?
So the ultra early ones went just over 120. So we had that
Okay.
high heat through the flowering period. So we were still pleased, but disappointed. Our highest yielding oats ever, we've had, just like I got right here, 146 was our highest yielding, and that was in 2021. And they were, again, seed March 13th. So we range in there. Our long-term average, I did write it down here just because our long-term average is 114. So if someone who grows these, as one of their main crops would say that's, disappointing. But for us, we're still learning, and that we're slowly ratcheting that up. So.
Yep. No, I think that's very respectable. Someone adds here, I started late April in 2023 to get the neighbors all excited. That is, it's important. There has to be somebody in the neighborhood that does it. So thank you, Tyler, for being that person. Yes, I do appreciate it. Okay, so Brian, there is a question here on equipment as far as openers, etc. And Tyler may be able to ask this as well because it's slightly different scenarios here. So Brian, you did note that perhaps in the 1 year it was maybe the ground wasn't quite fit and it didn't do a great job. But do you change anything at all? Tyler mentioned more downward force when he's going on the frost. But actually opener wise, etc. Have you changed much?
No, not really. We've just compared what would be a Conservapac knife opener, or now John Deere, I guess, to the Pillar Lasers disc opener. And from previous work that we did on winter wheat, the disc opener would have higher yields compared to a Conservapac with a winter wheat, but then the Conservapac knife opener would have higher yields with spring wheat. But in this, now we've got this hybrid in ultra early seeding, and we just finished a 5-year study at Lethbridge, but Lethbridge only, to be fair, and that Pillar Laser disc kind of came out a little bit better. So, probably especially if you're frost seeding like these guys, obviously you're not going to be, going in with an aggressive hole opener or anything. You're going to be trying to skim in with a disc opener. So, if I had to guess, not that anybody's going to change out their drills for that necessarily, but it's probably
pretty important.
A bit of an advantage.
They might.
For the disc.
And Tyler, for you, how did you sort of decide what you were going to go with, and has it changed since you started doing this?
Using the same drill we've had since 1988, or same opener, I should say, different drill. John Deere no-till drill. So it's just an air seeder now versus a box drill. So no, that's what we have, and that's what we're going to use, and to get through that frost layer. I see the shanks you guys use out west. I don't know how we'd pull that through some of our ground.
Yep, I could see that. Just more horsepower, Tyler. That's all it takes, right, Brian?
Yeah.
Just a bigger tractor. That's it.
We know a guy. I know a guy who would sell it to me.
There you go. Super simple solution. I got to tell you, that's how we fix these things. Okay. No, that's fantastic. We've got there's a few other questions here. We can't get to all of them. Peter wants to know though, Brian, if we know, as you've said, we know that we are maintaining yield potential. We're not giving any up, but we may actually gain some yield potential. Have you looked at the need potentially to up those nitrogen rates if you've got better yield potential? Has that worked its way into any of this research?
Graham did a little bit of that with his PhD, more on enhanced efficiency fertilizers versus not. And it was kind of a nothing burger, to be honest. So I think what we've been doing is just kind of a practical approach of soil sampling, and sending it off to a lab, usually, Western Ag Innovations with their PRS probe, or just a local thing, and getting them to tell us what we should do. And if we don't, I probably just go with like what a gut feeling on my part. But like a lot of these, especially because we've been in a drought period, like the nitrogen isn't like a big deal. And if you can get a year like 2024, like we did at Lethbridge, I mean, that's just a huge bonus considering the era that we're in. So not a lot on the nitrogen. I mean, there's a little bit more planning on the herbicide management because you can't do a pre-seed burn down. So if you're pre-planning, that's great. And potentially doing a soil residual application in fall for that ultra early piece of land, that would be ideal. But honestly, you're in so early and it's up and established so fast. It's kind of like winter wheat where you get really good weed compatibility too.
Tyler, have you found that with the oats that they're competitive for the spring weed flush?
Yes, we try. If we know we're going to oats, we try and do a fall burn down on the field just to stay. We have a wonderful weed called fleabane here that poses a lot more challenges. So we do still probably go through with a herbicide in our oats, just trying to stay ahead of that. Just no different than our cereals or wheat. Sorry.
Yeah, fleabane it's a nasty one, just a jerk.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. All right. We are out of time. Thank you both so much. This is absolutely fascinating. Thank you everyone for your fantastic comments and questions in the chat. I know we maybe missed some. So if you've got any lingering questions, you can always email me, lsmith@realagriculture.com, and I can put you in touch with these two for sure. But Tyler, Brian, thank you so much for joining me on the Agronomists. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
All right. And we will be back, of course, next week, 8 p.m. Eastern, right here for the Agronomists. Check it out. And thank you, everyone, for joining me. We'll see you next week.